I'm independent. You know it. You love it. You can't live without it. Rockland World Radio.
Welcome to Divine Dialogue, heard on Rockland World Radio every Monday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be sure to check out the archives by clicking on the archives page located off the menu bar. And now the hosts of Divine Dialogue, Lisa A. Howard and Teresa Winicky.
Good evening, folks. I'm Lisa Howard, Teresa Winicky, and Jan Shishin. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on This or Better's Divine Dialogue series. In addition, or following, I should say, last week's show, we talked about the 5 miles, pursuing your resolution or your goal setting, and being at the last 5 miles, being the longest or seeming the toughest. And so on tonight's show, later this evening, Coach Selby from Elevate will be on to share some of their beliefs and how they coach their student athletes, as well as curriculum that they have prepared to assess their athlete and the parents of those athletes in terms of their mental attitude and how their mental attitude plays such an essential role in not only the individual success, but the success of their team ultimately. And so I thought it would be fun too, and we've already started engaging in how beliefs either help or hurt one's pursuit of their so-called dreams and endeavors. And
So we're talking about beliefs, or where beliefs are instilled in us. And we were just chatting before the cameras came on. The question, is it innate? Jan was saying about it, she doesn't believe it's innate, or depending on the DNA.
I think there's there's certainly a combination of things, but the fact that my observation was in regards to my 15-month-old granddaughter, and how already at that age she is very determined and has not had a large exposure to learning that in outside settings. So there must be something that people come here with or develop very young. And determination is certainly one of those concepts or qualities that make for usually a successful life. If you have determination to succeed at something, or you have determination to do something, you're much more likely to accomplish it. So where does that come from? Where do we look to get the answers to see where that's about, and how do we instill it in young people, particularly because that's the future of our world, and how do we encourage others who want to accomplish something, want to make a resolution or resolve to do something? How do we enable or help them to enable themselves?
Well, part of the work that I have done, I do some parenting work. And it's really not telling people how to parent. It's really the language of parenting and what facilitates children to be able to develop into that curious, into that driven, or they have their own agenda, they have their own dreams, they have their own plans, and how to facilitate the language to facilitate that, to bring that out in a child. So the studies that I have read, 99.9% of all children are born with a genius capacity. Now, genius being the way we all take in information from all of our senses, from our intuition, from our surroundings. All of 99.9% are all born geniuses, every person. By the time that they are 2, by the time they are 5, 20% are geniuses still, rated geniuses. And by the time we're 20, 2% of the population are rated as genius. So what happens in those 5 years or those 20 years? Because we all start out as geniuses. And most of that study came back that it's the learned voice of internal judgment. We start looking at the outside world.
For approval.
For what's right, we learn a model from, might be our parents' best thinking, but by the time they got to, be 18 or 20 or 25 when they had their children,
Right.
They already had that programmed into them too from their parents' best thinking of how that worked. So yes, I think part of it is really innate, because between the age of 0 and 2, it's said that you never go back and tap into that much genius capacity ever in your life again, from all the things that you have to learn, not only just to survive, but you start, saying, oh, how does that hand move? How does that thing move? It's attached to my body. What's it doing? And they just be curious. And like you said, they are curious. And that's, I think one of my mentors has said, we're only born with 2 fears. One is loud noises and falling. Those are the only 2 fears that we're actually born with, the reactions that we have to them. Everything else is learned. And it's usually learned from, up until the age of 7, we are like a sponge. After that, at around the age of 7, we get reasoning capacities, the age of reason. And so we intuit everything that's going around us. It's absorbed into us, into our memory, into our, you could say, not your literal DNA, but from the reading that I've been doing lately, that the way we think can turn on different DNA genes that we have in our body, which would then, so it's not anymore, it's, nature, we know just from being born, you get what your parents get. But in different circumstances, different situations, on what emotional trauma we have, and things that happen to us, or joy that we have, you can turn on different genes by the thinking. And the reason why they say that is just the thinking, the hormones that are emitted into our body from the science part of it, from being really happy, and the serotonin and all the good stuff that happens, as opposed to when we're scared to death or something traumatic happens and we can't let it go. You're in fight or flight for a long time. So those hormones don't get emitted anymore. So then your whole chemistry in your body changes.
And it becomes vulnerable to
Disease,
its environment and
its
disease,
environment, and whatever happens. So I mean, I'm just starting to read about all that science stuff, and how that really, the thoughts really do create the results that we have in our life.
Right.
So so the more we're able to, and even as adults, for communication, the way we language what we want, the things we desire, the dreams that we have, the way we language it, you get a different result when you have the capacity to actually express that, to believe in that, and to move into that.
So the quote that's coming to mind right now is that our role is not to learn more, but to unlearn.
Yeah.
So when we're now 30, or maybe we should be starting when we're 20, when that dropped to 2%, we should stop learning and start unlearning.
Yes, absolutely.
So all of the beliefs and the behavioral patterns that we have acquired along the years, and now we are adults in our midlife, or we'll say even young adults in late 20s and right up to 60, and we still have dreams and desires. And of course, the closer we get to the other side of that ladder, it looks like we have less time. But what changes from an athlete that is in high school playing high school basketball in hopes of getting picked by a college of his choice? What keeps their resolve? What keeps them in the game and playing? And what changes for us when we're in our 30s and 40s and I would love to say I was in my 30s and 50s, but there's a huge gap from the possibility to limitation. And so we have to start putting practices in place in our daily lives to unlearn some of the beliefs that are driving our lives right now, right? So if we're experiencing lack of any kind, whether it's financial lack or relationship issues and so on, it's an opportunity to take, hence the REACH programs and so on, that encourage you to go through the 5 steps and recognize where the belief came from. How is it evident in your life? Is it yours? Did you inherit this belief, and so on? So that's part of what this whole dialogue is always about, right? We're all work in progress all the time. Whether you're 20 or you're 60, we are a work in progress, because as we grow and evolve, whether we're doing so in a spiritual capacity or one of a specific education, we have learned what we have learned up to this point, and we are all that we know. That includes the negative and the positive. So I think a good direction in pursuing one's resolution and preparing. Now, our workshop starts February 4th. This is the 7 days to countdown before we actually make our decision as to what we are looking to pursue. This is the so-called resolution, and whether your resolution is to practice the attributes and characters of a person of resolve, or if it's to actually specify a goal. You want to quit smoking, you want to advance in your career, you want to start that business, however specific you want to get, then we have to start by preparing an environment, both physically in our lives and mentally, our mental environment, and to cultivate an atmosphere that allows these things to manifest.
Gotta plant our garden.
Exactly.
Decide what kind of seeds we want to grow. And don't put fig seeds if we want apples.
And people get frustrated because they do try time and time again. They make their resolution, and I'm going to say it's not even their fault that they can't attain their resolution. I mean, there's thoughts that they have to think, and the beliefs that they have to have. But most of that, if you look way back at what your practices were, what your habits were, or what was ingrained in you back then, all of the habits that you've made are still, you embodied them. And they're just, you don't even have to think about them. It's like driving a car. When you first have to learn to drive a car, you have to be so resolved to, okay, you got to check the mirror and you got to put it in drive and you got to, whatever you have to do, it's not automatic yet. But over the course of the years, the 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you're probably doing the same thing that you did back when you were 10, 20, or 30 in your habits, your habitual, you get up in the morning, you put your right foot down first or you put left foot down first. Which leg of your pants do you put which pant leg do you put on first? So it's all habits, all embodied. You don't have to think about it. You're on automatic now, and you just do it. You brush your teeth, and you just have certain habits. So that, by the time you're 35 years old, 95% of what you do is habitual. Unless you go outside of your comfort zone and learn something new, read something new, talk to people, get in, go to the gym, learn something. Your muscles only grow. If you're still lifting 5-pound weights a year after you went to the gym, there's no growth. There's nothing there. So that's how muscle, you have to break it to build it, to do that kind of thing. So it's really just when we talk to Coach Selby, when he talks about athletes in particular, it's not only athletes, but, people who are top performers in their company and their jobs, or people who are really creative, top at their craft. What is it that they do? What are the habits of those highly successful people? And most people, a lot of people, they get to where they are. You're either pushed by pain or you're pushed by a vision, right? It's either joy or pain.
Pain or passion.
So which do you want it to be? Do you want to be only pushed by pain? A lot of people grow only because they have to, or can you just choose to say, I would love to grow. I would love to be in joy and not to be pushed by pain. But most people don't take the time to sit down and think about, what is it that I want for my life, like this year? What is it? We're talking about, what is the greatest experience of myself that I want to have? And most people don't ask that question. Most people come from the question of, okay, what's going to make me happy right now? Or,
So let's repeat that question again.
Okay.
Hopefully for any viewers who have a pen and paper and want to review that question, that's something for them to ponder.
So what is the greatest experience of myself that I want to have? Because
What is the greatest experience of myself?
that I want to have. And, it's usually if you were hit by a car tomorrow, or, or if you're laying in...
That's not one of the experiences.
Yeah,
I was going
but if
for.
you're laying on your deathbed,
I
whatever...
pass.
Whatever age you are, and you're about to take your last breath, what is it that you would really love to have done with your life?
Well, I think one of the things you're saying is something that, I say to people is, do you choose to live on the surface of your life, or do you choose to dive deeply? What experience do you want? Do you want life to happen to you, or do you want to take control of your life?
By design or default.
So, in keeping with the theme of resolve, what is your resolve? What's your intention?
And can you be rigorous in it?
Yeah.
Because we could all say we want, we'd love to. Do we truly believe? We were talking about believe. Do we truly believe that it's possible
How
for
much
us?
does it matter to you that you're going to grow this year? Or are you happy to just be stagnant? I don't think we have too many listeners that are going to be listening to this program that are in a place of stagnancy. But, it is an important issue for people. Do you want to grow your spiritual self? You have multiple selves. Which part do you want to pay attention to?
And that willingness that we talked about earlier. Because we can believe something, we can want something, but we have to be willing and committed to it. What investment, how much do we really want it? How invested in that are we? Because we can be a person of resolve and say we want something and we're determined, but the commitment has to equal the determination.
Yeah, I'm sure every one of us knows a story about somebody who is willing to go buy lotto tickets, whenever the lotto or the Powerball, whatever, Mega Millions gets to be some enormous figure. But how hard are you actually willing to work to accomplish an end that would give you probably just as much as many of these, lotteries by the time you're done with it?
Right.
What are we willing to do? What are we willing to invest in ourselves?
Right. And I think that point, for me, what that brings up is that as a practitioner, oftentimes when I'm in spiritual mind treatment with a client, sometimes I have the same clients repeatedly over and over for the same. They'll a demonstration will have been made, and it's small in comparison to what they were hoping for. Does that is I know from my education that is the result of their mental equivalent, their mental attitude, their atmosphere around that particular issue. But when they keep coming back for the same thing, you then have to wonder, that's where the determination and the commitment need to be married. Because you want someone else to do it for you, or are you committed enough to do it for yourself? Because you can keep coming back and back, and we can keep charging you for the treatment, and you'll get small demonstrations. Their demonstration is never a reflection of my consciousness, but it's an equivalent of theirs. So when we're talking about resolve and having the determination, I thought that the article on Coach Selby's website, and I'll let Coach Selby talk about the mental game and what that curriculum was designed for. But I was sharing with the girls earlier that I loved the what we believe topic on his website, and he talked about, and he'll go into depths more, but it's a decent sized paragraph. When you have some time, you can visit the mental game. But really, what I got from it was the major emphasis that a mental attitude plays on the playing field or the classroom. And so I often use, analogies as life being a playing ground, or sometimes it's a classroom. When you're struggling with something, it's a classroom. When you're enjoying life, it's a playground. So there was so much correlation with goal setting, whether you are middle-aged or you're an athlete, that I wanted him to talk about why he designed this particular curriculum and how this curriculum, or the results of the curriculum, impact the individual's success and the team's success. In this case, they're looking to get picked to be on a team. But for us, each one of us has a different goal. And for those of you who are watching, the dial-in number is 845-353-2910. I'm just a little reluctant to continue the conversation about Coach Selby until he gets on, because I'd really love for you to hear the passion and the determination in Coach Selby. He was an inspiration to me. I met them in Connecticut a couple months back, and it had been the first time that I saw the lobby of the Marriott Hotel was filled. I don't even know how many young men there were, teenagers from 16 right up to seniors, and there were two different teams. And I was amazed. First off, I was impressed at how beautiful these kids behaved. They were, it was so peaceful. Everyone was eating. There were over 60 teenagers in a room. I have one at home that makes all kinds of noise. So to have 60 in a small hotel lobby, it was almost surreal that there was no noise. You could just hear a pin drop. So I couldn't wait to find out what this team was all about. And then I eventually met their coach, and that was actually the first basketball game that I had ever seen. And I went, they invited me to go watch their game, and I did. I finished my meetings, and the following afternoon drove to Princeton to watch them play. So that was a lot of fun. And then Coach Selby and I have had a few conversations, phone conversations. They're in Miami. The school, Elevate, is located in Miami. And so Coach and I have had a couple of conversations about our paths and how his curriculum and what this show is all about. This particular month happens to be about resolutions and resolve. Divine Dialogue it's about solutions. It's about recognizing where the changes we want to make and the pursuit of them and the effective best way to make those changes. So we have about 4 minutes before Coach Selby gets on. So I invite any callers who might have a conversation, a comment or a question about the conversation we've shared thus far. Again, the number is 845-353-2910. And in just a few more minutes, Coach Selby will be on. And so please, I encourage you to continue listening. And if you have any questions for Coach, we'll make time for those questions later in the show as well.
So going back to it, I think part of it when people make resolutions, I think the 18% that we talked about last week that actually survive in that work, there has to be some type of urgency. The reason why they want that resolution or that goal or that whatever it is, there has to be some type of urgency. Because if there's no urgency, most of the time, if you're comfortable with the money, I'm not saying that you're always happy with the money you have, but if you're comfortable, your rent is paid and you have enough money to go out to eat, and that comfort lulls you into a sleep kind of thing where, I don't have to stretch myself, I'm good.
Right.
So if there's no urgency, there will be no going out of your comfort zone. When that's what we talked about, is there pain or do you want to go in with joy or be pushed by pain? So what are people's urgencies to accomplish whatever it is in their life?
So that brings me to one of the quotes on their website. It's not the will to win that matters. Everyone has that. It's the will to prepare to win that matters. Hence taking workshops and classes and if it's not classes, is it being with and preparing, whether in a team environment or individually, to make those changes. How do you do that? You find the resources. To be a person of resolve, to have that determination, means to act and to seek the information needed to grow your mental attitude.
Yeah, I think the phrase "go out of your comfort zone" is crucial here. I think most of us really don't learn solidly until we do that. If we stay in our comfort zone, we are content with the status quo, right? I mean, by definition.
Yeah. I was
so whether the venue is money, earning more money, or a level of financial comfort beyond where you're at, or securing physical fitness if you're not present, whatever the issue. It's going out of your comfort zone.
So again, it goes back to commitment,
Yeah.
though. I keep coming back to commitment, because if you're assessing a goal or what is worthy of being on your resolution list, then maybe a good way to start that is to write down what those goals are, and then have the conversation with yourself. How invested are you? What are you willing to do? Because if your determination is based on your comfort level, you're not going anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
So then you're wasting your time and your money.
right.
Right? So that's a good way to assess whether the goal belongs on the list. As far as I'm concerned, if your goal allows you to stay in your comfort zone, it's not big enough.
Oh, absolutely.
right?
There's no stretch.
Right.
There's no.
Yeah.
It's no big enough. You're
Stretch.
spinning your wheels, you're walking on a treadmill, you're not going anywhere.
Right. And one of the mistakes, I do a talk on the 5 mistakes that people make in their resolutions. And one is just, companies mostly, when they make a mistake, we'll just do 10% more than we did last year. Now, 10% is not a big stretch. Yeah. So what is it for people? You're being a sales rep, right? So you get a quota that you have to meet. Like, how are you determine numbers you have to meet? So they tell you.
Well, in my business is always 21%. They don't want you to show up with less than 21%.
From the previous year. Okay, so do you think that's a stretch? Like, is that something you have to work towards, or is that easy schmeezy? Like 10%, you'd be, I could do that with my hands tied. So there's really no press, right?
There's no press at 5. 10 starts. It depends, in the environment, in the metals distribution industry, the economy is a huge driver. There's a lot of variables that impact that. But I see the point that you're trying to make.
So would your thinking be different? But so between 5 and 10, like up to 5%, oh, easy schmeezy. You don't really have to put that mental energy into really thinking about, oh my God, how am I supposed to, like, what's the drive? For 5%, you don't need to change your thinking that
Right.
much, right?
Right.
But when you talk that you need a 20% change, your thinking needs to change.
Yep.
And one of my mentors, David Nagel, said, I took a quote down, says, all behavior is a result of our current belief system, right? What we're going to do or not do, right?
Right.
So we cannot think ourselves into a new way of behaving. We have to behave ourselves into a new way of thinking.
Exactly. Hence practice.
Yeah.
Practicing the attributes of a person of resolve.
Yeah, you do. Because just because we understand a thing doesn't mean we can change it. Understanding creates the illusion of personal transformation, but it does not deliver the reality of it. Because people think if they understand something, they got it. But really, you don't understand it till your life reflects it.
Until you've experienced it.
Well, you can experience it, but then it's the practice of it, and so you don't really
Well, you don't know
understand
something until you really know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what
And
we
you know it
And
by
then you're-
being and having and doing it.
And your life reflects
Right,
the result.
absolutely.
And their life reflects that.
What we say in the bodywork field is you think with your head, but until you make the connection to your, and we're spiritual beings, so until you make the connection to your mind, your body, and your spirit, it's just data.
Yeah, it is, because until you put the
Yep.
spirit in, or the soul drive, or the passion, whatever it is, there's no magnet
Yep.
for the thinking and the body. Where's the magnet? Where it's going to
Mhm.
take you to the next is that passion and the love of it, and and it could be just be for people like you said, these boys on the team. Their job is probably to get a scholarship to college. They want to play at the next level. For them, high school going into college. So, their goal is probably one of their goals at practice is to get better. I remember reading an article about someone. My kids have always played competitive sports. There was a boy, and I don't remember where he was from, but he got up every morning before high school and took 300 free throws to get better at what he did. And high school starts at 7:30. So the boy was up,
Yep.
pretty early, and the kids that go to hockey practice before high school. I mean, they've got people
Right.
have athletes have insane schedules of what they do to get a leg up on.
Well, I
on
think
that.
anybody that has a commitment to something, you remind me of the days when I was in high school and marching band practice was in the parking lot before high school. I know what
Before
you
high
mean.
school.
Yeah,
Before.
before and after. Sometimes during lunch. But that's commitment. That's
Yeah,
one of the things we were
definitely.
talking about before. How much are you committed to this? Are you showing up for practice? And what is your mental attitude? Are you there? I mean, in marching band, you have, you've got to learn these routines that you'll never see them, but people up in the stands are going to see if you move the right way or the wrong way.
Right?
Are you going to be out there doing them, practicing, so that you don't be the one who messes up?
Right.
Because you're playing an instrument and doing all those things. So,
Yeah, that is a lot of
whatever
practice.
your field is, how are you going to show up for that field? What is your level of commitment? What is your level of intention? And when we get into the higher levels of thought and being, where is your spiritual practice? Where is the connection that gives you the joy in doing whatever this is
Right.
that you're doing, whether it's athletics or art or you name it.
Right. And is physical skill always enough to be a strong conviction?
No.
No,
Not-
absolutely
exactly,
not,
right?
sure.
It's
No.
not. So in the game of life, or in the arena of life, or the classroom of life, that's exactly why having a spiritual practice of some kind, not any one particular kind, there are many paths, is essential, because in pursuit of our goals and in the last 5-mile stretch, when there is no evidence of the progress, and you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, you can't see it anywhere. You believe it's there, but you can't necessarily see it? How do you keep yourself inspired and motivated? How do you hold on to that resolve and continue it in the absence of any proof of otherwise? And without a spiritual practice or a faith in something not outside of yourself. That's not my faith. My faith is within me, not because of me, but because of a bigger idea of who I am. And how through study, practice, and education, we can do the unlearning, right? Do the unlearning, learn a different truth, an empowering truth, and start expanding my mental equivalent of myself. Because if it was left all to me, I don't believe that my physical ability to endure would carry me through when there's an absence of proof. That's when the passion and the faith needs to come in. So there are so many variables to what makes a person successful over someone who is not. Mental atmosphere is obviously, I think, hands down at the top 3. But most importantly, I think the first step is understanding who we are and what we are truly capable of. Not by looking at our past, because that would only show us the indoctrinated beliefs that show up somewhere after 2, apparently, according to Teresa's research, when it becomes more prevalent in our life. But John Welshon was talking once at Centers for Spiritual Living in Morristown this one particular Sunday, and he was talking about babies. He was actually talking about the ego and how to trust your intuition and know. And he talked about love will always take you. It will always get you there. It won't always be the road that you had chosen, but love will always lead you. The ego will never believe you.
Say that again?
The ego will never trust love. But so having love for oneself and a high self-esteem, I think people with resolve also have a greater self-esteem for themselves. Do you understand what I'm saying? Am I explaining that right? If you were you can't be a person of resolve and lack self-esteem. You have to have a confidence in yourself, right? You have to have a confidence in yourself. So whether that faith is in yourself or in something else, a higher, or in a practice or a ritual or whatever that faith is a key component to your mental attitude. It's technically what's driving you, I believe.
Yeah, well, I've learned in many different venues that the answer is love. You know, when Reverend Jennifer did the fall retreat, the answer was love. You know, she's doing another mini retreat on March 1st, and it's about the answer being love. But, you know, over and over again, I've learned from metaphysical teachers and in many different venues that it comes down to being in your heart. And what does that mean? First, that means being able to love yourself.
Exactly.
And that comes
from
our basic, I think, our sense of spirituality. As you say, whatever path you've chosen to be there. I don't know anybody that I could consider that doesn't have a sense of that kind of love of self and is successful. If you don't have that, I agree with you. I don't think you can be successful.
So when we're in this month of January, we're talking about what we want for our lives. Does what we want for our life align with or measure our own self-love? If it's up to our self-love, then maybe we need to start working on the love of ourselves. How do we show that? Are we investing in ourselves? So I'm struggling to make this point. I feel like I'm struggling to make this point at the moment, but what I want to get to is that having love of self shows when you invest in yourself, to educate yourself and advance yourself. When you are, that stretch, whether it's coming from education or whatever that change is, if you love yourself enough to invest in yourself and make a change in yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Are we taking care of ourselves?
Yeah, right.
You know.
So.
And how are we showing that? How are we showing up for ourselves? You know, the expression is, I may have told you the story before, but many, many years ago I attended a 12-step program for quite some time, and one of my dear friends in there used to say when she would get there at meeting time, Today I'm showing up for myself. And, you know, it's been a phrase that's stuck with me for 20 plus years. And, you know, I think that's the question. How are you showing up for yourself?
Because I think that's a great question, and it goes back to the what's the greatest experience of myself do I want to have, and that would be the
Right.
question
Yeah.
that
Right,
would go
exactly.
hand in hand with that, because we are here.
I wish I could say I deliberately tied that in together, but I didn't. I didn't. But look how beautifully,
did.
look how beautifully when you engage in
Yes.
divine dialogue,
That's right.
it finds a way of leading you to
the tapestry.
beautiful.
The
So
tapestry.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but so
No, that's
finish
okay.
that beautiful comment you were making
Um,
about your question.
Come on, you're younger than us. You can remember.
About your question. I'm so sorry I took you off
that's
that.
okay. I don't remember.
So I will know not to do that again for the next time. Coach Selby, if you're out there, now is a perfect time to call in. The number is 845-353-2910. We would love to hear from you.
And he was on the road, right? So
Yes, he was on the road, so he had he had earlier appointments, but they're on the road, so I guess they're in between right now. I'm not sure exactly what on the road means. Does that mean for me, on the road means I'm in my car and I'm on a highway? For them and a basketball team, on the road could mean that
And a
you're on a
bus.
basketball court somewhere.
Right.
So, anyway, he'll be calling in momentarily. I wish you could remember what you were going to
Well,
say.
it was about love. What was the question, your friend?
Showing up for yourself.
How do you show up for yourself?
What is your commitment to you?
And I think if we whenever we get at a point in our day where we want to go back to our comfort zone and say, that's enough, I don't really need to do it. So if you asked your question at the beginning of the day and actually wrote it down, what is it that I would love my day to look like? Like, what would I be satisfied with today if I did, whatever that was? How could I stretch myself today, do more than I did yesterday, or complete something? And then when you get to that tired point of the day when you just had enough or life happened, and then you ask yourself that question, how do I want to show up for myself today? I think then you would get that internal resolve. The people that are great at what they do or have above and beyond everybody else will always ask themselves that question, how do I want to show up for myself today? And then take that extra step. And discipline, I learned, discipline is not having someone,
With a whip?
whip you because you didn't do anything or give you a punishment. That's not discipline. You don't do that because you're afraid you're going to get whipped or
Right.
something. You do it
Right, because then you're still coming from a place of fear anyway.
Right. So
It goes back to
discipline
what
is
Lisa
about
said. It's about the commitment.
it's about
Discipline is about the commitment.
giving yourself a command and following it. And I think really that is what discipline in a new kind of a perception of the word as a discipline. I always thought it was get smacked or disciplined by the nuns or just doing something bad that you had to get
Right.
set right for. And if I was one of the parenting program I do, we talk about if the kid, what is a timeout really solve, or what is if you punish them, you send them to their room. And then she asked the question, now let me ask you, when you were a teenager or you were a middle, whatever you were, and you got sent to your room because you did something wrong, did you ever sit there and say, oh boy,
I should really think about this. How could I have done it better? I thought about how can I avoid getting caught
the next time? Absolutely.
Right.
And that's why
Or I'm
punishments
really angry at them
don't
for
work.
putting me in here.
Punishments don't work because it's external. You don't ever go internal. It's always about what they did to me. And I'll never get caught at that again. So punishments don't work. And then, how could you have a conversation with whoever? It could be about, consequence. Like, what would be the consequence if? And you never, ever have a conversation with a teen or somebody who's just not willing to listen. They're in that hyper state of mind. I mean, you just can't even get in there they're in a ranting stage or not listening stage. But how do you have a conversation with them or anybody? It could be anybody, not even your kids, people that you work with. Really, so what would be the consequence if we did this? And you try to do it before anything happens, but, really sit
Right.
them down and say, what do you think? Or one good tool is, what do you think, how do you want it? What consequence do you want to have out of this? And they would probably come up with a worse punishment than you could ever think of to give them for once they actually thought about what the consequence was, how it could actually unfold if whatever they did, came to fruition. So it's just really how we go back to, how we language to people, how we communicate to people.
Right.
Not only do we communicate to people, we communicate to ourselves.
Yeah.
What are we telling ourselves?
Are we shitting all over ourselves?
Who do we have on the line?
This is Jane.
Hi, Jane,
Hi.
and welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Did
Thank
you have did you want to chime in on the conversation? You have a question?
I would like to get, I don't know what you were saying. I just came in on it, so I'd like to maybe absorb it for 5 minutes.
Okay. Is there a question? What did you hear? Let me ask you this. What did you hear? What made you call in?
I was asked to call in. I have a, well, first of all, I'm having a wonderful year, and I think it's all because of a turnaround that I've experienced, both spiritually and otherwise. I just feel that this turnaround that I'm experiencing is due to a year of soul searching and a year of just going into me and finding out who I was and what wasn't working, what is working, and spiritually getting really more involved. And it's been an amazing journey.
So, Jane, let me stop you just for one moment. It's fascinating and wonderful to hear you talk about how wonderful the year is going. This month's topic on the show is about resolutions. Our workshop, Resolution Success, begins on February 4th, so we dedicated the month to resolutions and resolve. What does it mean? What is a resolution? And being a person of resolve, how does one get to determine what is a viable resolution? You know, what stretches us and what grows. So over the year, you talked about your experience and how much you've grown in the last year.
Well, I think that resolution comes from experience. And if you're open to change and you're open to see what needs to be different with you and what needs to change, then the resolution is very plain to see. I don't think that once you are accepting of what has come to you, and then you can see what you weren't doing in the past as opposed to what you are doing now that works for you. Resolution to me means just continuing to live this newfound life that I have, and just listening to positivity. That's my resolution. Taking out all negativity and being as positive as possible.
Did you make that? We were talking before about a commitment. So you said you had a fabulous year. Was it a commitment to yourself that you actually went in and really were searching for that this year?
Yeah. I think maybe the commitment started way before this year, I have to say. But the commitment was to find out what was working and what was not working, and how I could affect a change for my betterment. And the more I delved into this, the more I was open to guidance. The curtain just kept rising higher and higher, and so yeah, the commitment is to me this year, and the resolution is to be not only positive for myself, but I have people around me who, you still have people around you who, yeah, that's all well and good, but that works for a while. It used to be very hard for me to keep my resolute without changing back. But when you have experienced it to a degree where it's like turning on a faucet, or it's just a newfound energy that you have. Those kind of comments. I also would like this year for me to be helping people like that. And I have helped a person that I used to work with, a very negative person, and I'm noticing changes in her that is unbelievable. So, and I like helping people. So I think that is part of my resolution also.
That's great. Jane, what, in terms of commitment, aside from honing your faith, you took action steps. You've made a commitment to education. To what practices have you added to your daily routine that aided you in getting here? Because it didn't fall from the sky. The change
No.
it took your cooperation, your willingness, your openness, your resolve. You
Yeah.
stayed on track when there. What did you do? Here's a better question. When your pursuit was absent of any progress, how did you maintain your resolve?
One word: meditation. One word. I went into a quiet space, not necessarily saying anything, just to listen, just to silently ponder, and it has done amazing things for me. Amazing.
Well, I thank you for sharing that with our audience. We do have another caller. Unfortunately, at the moment, we can only take one call at a time. So I wish you could share more, and I hope that you will join us again and share more of your experience. But thank you, Jane, very
You're
much
welcome.
for calling in.
Thank you.
And I hope you'll continue watching, and let's leave the line open now for Coach Selby, and I think you'll be fascinated to listen to some of his perspective on the essential environment of the mental attitude.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yes, so it doesn't just fall from the sky. It's got to be a determination,
It's a tool.
a commitment, a tool. Meditation is a wonderful, wonderful tool to help in the furthering. And after you meditate, it's also the different actions that you take that you weren't taking before you started the meditation. So it all has to come together. And she said, so the meditation helped her. You can only start with yourself. You can't change anybody. As we've all learned in our life, you can't change anyone. They have to do it themselves. And it all starts right here. Right? It all
But
start-
you can be the example
Yes.
for somebody else. And
Absolutely.
if they don't change, they don't.
right.
So that's also giving up the vision or the form that you think other people should take.
Oh, yeah.
But if we continue to operate with the same mind that has brought us up to this point, the resolve, we have to have a resolve to change, excuse me, our present belief system. And I'm going to choke now. Excuse me. That's not what I wanted to do on internet radio and cough. So maybe I was sucking in too much air. The point I'm trying to make is that Jan happens to be one of our students. She has taken REACH classes with Teresa and I before. And she also attends the Centers for Spiritual Living in Rockland here at 521 North Broadway in Nyack. So I'm going to speak for Jane at the moment, having been a facilitator for a couple of workshops with Jane. Jane made a commitment to herself to love herself enough to educate, research, and educate herself on a different understanding of what life could be. She didn't allow her present conditions or her status quo to determine her joy. So she took classes and many other steps. She's implemented meditation into her daily practice. She got involved with a spiritual community that helps support our individual growth, not only as an individual, but truly focusing on our oneness. And that oneness is only made possible because of one mental atmosphere that, from a science of mind perspective, sometimes it can be difficult for me from a coach and facilitator perspective to a science of mind perspective. Although they are hand in hand. Jan took the steps to gain a different understanding of who she was and what her unlimited potential was. And she was committed to that growth and furthering her education and understanding. And that's why Jane can say today that it's been a wonderful year, because she made that investment in herself, and that investment meant being committed to practicing and adding things to our daily life that support our growth. And she talked about just now about removing herself from environments and people and conversations that told her the negatives, and deliberately put herself in an environment that fostered and supported what her intention was. So I think that that's a really key point too, to understand that in our commitment to being a person of resolve, and in our commitment to whatever this investment is that we're willing to make in ourselves, to truly understand that it takes action steps. It's going to take action. It's going to take
Yes.
something different than what
Yes.
you're doing now.
Right,
Because
absolutely.
nothing changes until something changes, and right? It's what comes
Absolutely.
first, the chicken or the egg. So I think that that's really, really key. I believe, not only from my spiritual education and all that Science of Mind has taught me, but from my own experience, that I truly believe that everyone on this planet has the ability to succeed. But it's a scientific proof, or it's been proven, that one will never outperform their own self-image. Hence, we go back to cultivating a self-esteem and a love of self. So do people who love themselves take classes? I think people that love themselves take classes. I don't think they take classes to learn how to love themselves. I think that do you understand what I'm trying to say
Well,
there?
there are classes to learn how to love
Yes,
yourself.
but do you understand what I'm saying there? I think that people who love themselves, it shows up in their actions. They do things.
Yes.
They're good to themselves. They are disciplined.
They do things that would give them joy. So one question you could ask every day is, what will bring joy to me today? Well, what can I do that I will be joyful about today? And that might be a good indicator of doing something outside of your regular comfort zone. Because most people, I don't know, they have so much on their plate. I don't think a lot of people have asked that question every day. Oh, what can I do to make myself happy today when I have the kids to get around and the job to do and the dog to feed and whatever business they do, all those things. I don't think a lot of people ever stop to say, what would make me happy today? And then actually do it. And it doesn't have to be a grandiose thing. You know, it's not about, you know, some people say, how do I show myself self-love? And some people would say, oh, I go get a manicure, or I go get, you know, I do some
Right.
retreat or do something like that. That's pleasure. I don't know that that's self-love all the time, but and it could be self-love, a form of self-love, but that's a pleasure thing, but it's not. Self-love would be, how do I experience my greatest self today? And
Right.
that would be in, let me learn a little bit more about my infinite potential that I do have inside of me. And self-love, grow yourself. Because I think that's what we're all here to do, is to really be the best that we can be and keep growing into that and continue every day, because that never stops. That does never stop. We have about 1 minute to finish up here.
So I would imagine that Coach Selby is celebrating a victory of some sort, and we will make a point. We will get Coach Selby back here, and hopefully next week. He has a lot to share that I think will inspire you. If nothing else, it will certainly give you something to ponder and consider as we approach the Resolution Success Workshop that begins on February 4th. This workshop is an 8-week workshop that takes place on Tuesday evenings at 8 o'clock. It's a 1-hour teleconference, so you never have to leave the comfort of your home. Pardon the pun on comfort zone. But you can, as you are preparing for your resolution, or wherever you are in your resolution, I would encourage you to consider your current belief system. Teresa's question.
And if you want to know more, go to thisorbetter.com.
Yes, click on the events page, and which has just been updated and is working perfectly as of this morning. So all of the mistakes have been corrected, and it's now functioning as it was designed to. And you will be too when you enroll in our 8-week Resolution Success 2014. Teresa and I are co-facilitators, and we will assist you through this 8-week process in getting you, helping you define, act, and envision what the greatest you can possibly look like, and how that shows up both in your career, your finances, and your love of self.
And we thank you for joining us this evening, and we're about out of time.
Yes, we
So
are.
thank you and tune in again, and you can get any of our shows, our recorded shows at rocklandworldradio.com.
Thank you, and good night.
Good night.
I was having trouble tonight.